Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Depth. I'm Dr. Elayne Anthony, and this program is designed to have real and deep conversations about news that affects us from the point of view of many in our immediate community. Today, we will go in depth about vaping, the nationwide outbreak of deaths and lung illnesses is also in effect here in Mississippi. How did vaping get started? And we will also see the death rate and hopefully an apparent slowdown. We'll introduce you to our guest in just a moment. To date, there have been nearly 2,000 cases of lung illnesses reported from 49 states. 37 deaths have been reported from 24 states, and many of the reported cases in the U.S. have been from cannabis-related products. Mississippi has seen 11 cases, with one of those being fatal. Most of the cases have been in people between the ages of 18 and 34 years old. We welcome to our show Dr. Thomas Dobbs, State Health Officer of the Mississippi State Department of Health. Dr. Dobbs, we're so happy to have you on In Depth, and thank you so much for coming. We would like to ask you, what kind of cases do you expect here in Mississippi, and do you expect them to rise?
Sure. So we've seen quite a few of these cases of what we call vaping-associated pneumonia, and something's happening when people vape these products. It causes a lung injury. It looks like pneumonia or lung inflammation, and it makes them really sick, where they can't breathe, will have to go in the hospital and be treated. We've had 11 of these cases so far documented in Mississippi. Surely there have been more, but this is how many that we've been able to document, and we've had one documented death. That was a young, healthy person who was vaping products they thought were safe. Actually, this person vaped and then got so scared, went to the hospital and swore would never vape again, but it was too late. And then over the course of several days, had a really bad event and didn't make it. So this is a really serious issue. The acute vape deaths is one thing, but the other question that we have about vaping has exploded across the country and also in Mississippi, and there's no knowledge on the long-term consequences of vaping, even if you don't get this pneumonia.
One thing that the data shows us is the age range. Mm-hmm. It's really our younger population. After you kind of researched and looked at the data, what is it about vaping that you feel that's attracted the age group between 18 and 34?
So if you look at the people who've had the pneumonia, mm-hmm. It's been a variety of folks. Mostly it's been people that we see who have vaped basically cannabis type products or THC. So basically, instead of smoking a joint, they're buying these cartridges over the internet or buying them from somebody. They're unregulated. There's no assurance of safety, and they've just been getting these things and have vaped them, for the marijuana, the THC effect. The problem is, or at least it appears to be, is the chemicals that they mix in there to make it where you can vape it is extremely damaging to the lungs. And the thing that really seems like it's the one that's making people so sick is vitamin E acetate. So it's kind of remarkable. It's actually vitamin E in like an oil format, and if you took it as a vitamin pill, it would be fine. But if you vaporize it and then it gets into your lung tissue, it's highly toxic and has probably caused most of these deaths.
Well, is there a flavor to this vaping that might be attractive to younger people?
Absolutely. We think that, a lot of the younger kids, we have kids as young as 12, 10 even starting to vape. And so there are these little vape cartridges that people can buy at a convenience store that are going to be like strawberry or bubble gum or, watermelon.
And that's what's intriguing to them.
It is. It's almost like Jolly Rancher flavors for tobacco, which is absolutely horrible. And some of these companies, especially Juul has been the one that's been singled out more than others, mm-hmm. Probably had some sort of really sinister sort of marketing campaign using social media and then choosing their flavors, trying to addict an entire new generation of kids to nicotine products.
And luckily, we've got a little bit of legislation out there to stop them from going after those young kids, and especially the 12 and 13-year-olds.
We do have some things, but we certainly could use a lot of help because the laws that we have about vaping right now are very weak compared to the tobacco laws, and certainly some parity, some equality between those sort of restrictions for tobacco and vaping would go a long way in helping our kids.
Okay, all right. When we come back, lawmakers in Washington, D.C. are putting a microscope on the vaping crisis. What can really be done? We'll talk about that after the break. And you're watching In Depth.
It's a connection to the world. A great starting point leading up to your final destination. A place where you'll see familiar faces, artists traveling, leaping even to different places. Because there are flight connections, then there are human connections. Those you can't buy a ticket for. You just have to be present. No matter where you go, you have something, some memory, some experience to hold on to. And before you explore it, you can get one more dose of vitality, hospitality, and congeniality, all at the Jackson Medgar Wiley Evers International Airport. Your pit stop for pleasant encounters. Your connection to the world.
What does it mean to be healthy? It means finding the steps you take today that lead to a healthier tomorrow, and knowing you have a partner on your wellness journey with the compassion of a cross and the security of a shield. Because at the end of the day, it means you, your health, your life, and all its possibilities. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Mississippi. Live healthy. Live blue. It's good to be blue.
You want it? We've got it. You need it. We've got it. You name it. We've got it. You want it? You need it. Here's how you get it. 60-month special financing with no minimum and no down payment. Available every day at Miskelly's.
Good tattoos aren't cheap. Cheap tattoos aren't good.
You can give a girl your heart, just don't give her your PIN number.
Regions understands that knowing how far you've come can help get you where you want to go. And our tools make the journey even easier.
It's okay if she makes more money than you. Actually, it's pretty cool.
Switch for good. Regions has the people, tools, and tech to move you forward.
While the vaping crisis continues across the United States, lawmakers in Washington are putting a microscope on the response to this epidemic. Members of the Senate Committee on Health heard from officials with the CDC and the Center for Tobacco Products, who are working to figure out what actually is causing this crisis. CNN's Camilla Burnell has the details.
As states around the country deal with a vaping epidemic, senators on Capitol Hill trying to get to the root of the problem.
This harms you. This will addict you. This could ultimately kill you.
The Senate Committee on Health Wednesday heard from health administrators whose agencies are currently investigating the issue.
We continue to suggest that people consider refraining from use of all e-cigarettes or vaping products.
So far, it doesn't appear that any one product is to blame, but many cases do seem to be linked with illegal sales. The investigation has also found that THC has been present in most of the samples that the FDA has tested. On Friday, the CDC said vitamin E acetate, an additive sometimes used in THC and other vaping products, may be to blame.
What we cannot say right now is whether there are other substances.
As they figure it out, health officials sounding the alarm on the rise of youth vaping.
Most young people walk around thinking that e-cigarettes are harmless.
But while senators agree on the problem,
it just seems to me we need swift, bold, quick action.
The solution will be harder to find.
We're probably going to end up doing the wrong thing, but if you want less kids to smoke, I'd just increase the penalties on people selling to kids, and you might have less kids smoking.
In Washington, I'm Camila Bernal reporting.
We are rejoined by our guest, Dr. Thomas Dobbs, who is our state health officer for the state of Mississippi. Dr. Dobbs, do you know of any efforts in our state here in Mississippi to pass laws to help curb the effects of vaping?
Yeah, no, great question. There have been efforts in previous sessions to look at vaping more holistically. There are some restrictions on vaping now that technically, you're not supposed to vape until you're 18. But a lot of the current law is very loose, not strictly enforced, and there's no parity with tobacco. So it's actually a lot easier, a lot safer to get vaping products, and also a lot cheaper because it's not taxed the same way. We have heard a lot of feedback from legislators, incoming legislators from both sides of the aisle who have expressed a lot of interest in looking at this vaping phenomenon. It's pretty frightening when you think about what's happening with our children, with our teenagers, with our middle schoolers who are vaping. A third of our teenage kids now are using nicotine products with some regularity, which is absolutely terrifying after all the progress that we've made. And so there is a realization that something needs to happen. And I do believe that there will be some strong legislation introduced that will address several things. Some of it might be, making tax equity with smokable tobacco, right? So vaping would be taxed at the same rate as, say, cigarettes, which makes perfect sense. Why would you not do that? Also looking at stronger enforcement, and then maybe even looking at increasing the age to 21, which certainly we would be very supportive as a public health measure. If you're worried about this issue, if you think it's important, and I think we all should, I would strongly encourage everyone to share it with their political leaders to make sure that they understand that this is an issue that the Mississippi communities find very important.
There's a misnomer out there that vaping is not quite as bad as smoking. What can we do to dispel that? Because you already shared with us when it comes to the damage of the lungs, nothing compares. So what could we do about that?
Yeah, so it's been marketed as a safer alternative to smoking, right? And we know that smoking is dangerous because it's been around for hundreds of years, right? And we've seen the bad effects and we've followed it over time. So we haven't really seen much of the long-term health impacts of vaping. So you can claim it's safe just because we haven't seen some of these things, but now that we're starting to see some of the pneumonia, right? So we're seeing the bad effects. Some of that's probably somewhat unique to the cartridges that are using the vitamin E and stuff like that. Some of them may not be, though. There are some people who use just nicotine products that don't have any of the other stuff in there that have been ill. There are other clear, really bad things that can happen. Causing a severe nicotine addiction in a teenager is not a safe thing to do. It sets these children up for additional addiction issues in the future because you've made them a severe nicotine addict. And if you look at things like the Juul little pods that people smoke, like one of those little USB looking things, one of those little guys has a whole pack of cigarettes worth of nicotine in it. And we're seeing kids smoking 4 of these a day, waking up throughout the night, smoking them because they're so heavily addicted to nicotine. So that's one horrible thing, is we're creating a whole new generation of nicotine addicts. And they may go on to stay on these things, or they may go on to combustible tobacco like cigarettes or cigars. But the other thing is there's no safety studies of these as far as like long-term exposure. When you vape, you're actually burning stuff. You're burning things. There's some heavy metals in there. There are toxic chemicals we know that are being absorbed into the lungs. And so we do know that it increases the risk of cardiovascular disease. We don't know really how that compares to tobacco so much, but we know it does increase the risk. And we also know that there are some early indicators that it also increases the risk of cancer. So these are not really proven or even thought to be safe products. They're just new. And people are assuming that there's going to be some safety.
Well, we're going to pick that up when we get back, but when we do, we're going to show the use of e-cigarettes, and we need to know how does that decrease blood flow to the heart. And we'll talk about it after the break. And you're watching In Depth.
It's a connection to the world. A great starting point leading up to your final destination. A place where you'll see familiar faces, artists traveling, leaping even to different places. Because there are flight connections, then there are human connections. Those you can't buy a ticket for. You just have to be present. No matter where you go, you have something, some memory, some experience to hold on to. And before you explore it, you can get one more dose of vitality, hospitality, and congeniality, all at the Jackson Medgar Wiley Evers International Airport. Your pit stop for pleasant encounters. Your connection to the world.
What does it mean to be healthy? It means finding the steps you take today that lead to a healthier tomorrow, and knowing you have a partner on your wellness journey with the compassion of a cross and the security of a shield. Because at the end of the day, it means you, your health, your life, and all its possibilities. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Mississippi. Live healthy. Live blue. It's good to be blue.
You want it? We've got it. You need it. We've got it. You name it. We've got it. You want it? You need it. Here's how you get it. 60-month special financing with no minimum and no down payment. Available every day at Miss Kelly's.
Good tattoos aren't cheap. Cheap tattoos aren't good.
You can give a girl your heart, just don't give her your PIN number.
Regions understands that knowing how far you've come can help get you where you want to go. And our tools make the journey even easier.
It's okay if she makes more money than you. Actually, it's pretty cool.
Switch for good. Regions has the people, tools, and tech to move you forward.
Welcome back, everyone. E-cigarettes could be worse for your heart than regular cigarettes. The American Heart Association is presenting 2 new studies at its upcoming scientific sessions meeting. The key findings that vaping has an unhealthy impact on heart disease. Factors including glucose and cholesterol levels. Researchers also say using e-cigarettes appears to decrease blood flow to the heart more than tobacco cigarettes. Meanwhile, the Trump administration says in a meeting with vaping industry representatives to discuss regulations. We're joined again by our guest, Dr. Dobbs. And would you explain how vaping can decrease the blood flow to the heart?
Oh, absolutely. So nicotine in and of itself is not a healthy drug. It's a stimulant, and so kind of like other stimulants, even like cocaine, it can cause the blood vessels to constrict and get tight. And so we know that the heart arteries that supply blood flow to the heart, if they constrict, it can cause a heart attack. And long-term can cause damage to the vessels such that you could be at high risk for a heart attack over time. In addition, it's very important to think about our pregnant moms, because they need good blood flow to the placenta to make sure the baby can develop in a healthy way. And smoking cigarettes or vaping produces such an intense amount of nicotine that it will decrease the blood flow to the baby. One thing about vaping that's very worrisome is you can get super high doses of nicotine more quickly and with a lot more rapidity than smoking sometimes. And so we're looking at these sort of almost like turbocharged nicotine delivery systems.
Well, that's something that we really need to look at with our young people, because it's affecting the whole, would you say the whole central nervous system in a way?
Yeah, the whole body is fueled by the vascular system, right? And if you're harming the vascular system, like heart attacks or stroke, or you are damaging all of your organs potentially. The other thing is there probably are some chemicals that are burned from the vaping process that are also going to be bad for your arteries and for your lungs. And so not only do we know some of it's bad, but we don't know how bad it's going to be because there's still so much that is unknown. It's like we're doing a huge natural experiment on our children, and we're going to wait and see what happens to them.
And since we don't know anything could really happen, there was a story on not too long ago that a young man was vaping at home and the parents didn't know about it.
Oh, yeah.
Until it was just about too late. But he has so much damage done already. He's probably going to be in bad shape for a while.
Yeah, it can cause long-term illness. It's not a safe thing. We just don't know how bad it is yet.
Because the data has not presented itself for us to be able. So then the advice is not to what?
Please do not. Don't. I mean, I wouldn't recommend anybody vaping. I mean, there is an argument that maybe adults, there might be some safety benefits over smoking cigarettes. And that's debatable. That may be true. It may not be true. But absolutely do not start vaping. If you, it's so dangerous for our kids. Our kids don't need to vape. If you're a parent, be aware of this as a risk factor and watch your kids. It's super easy. I mean, a lot of the YouTube stuff is how to trick your parents into not knowing you're vaping, or even in school. There's all these YouTube videos about how you can vape behind your teacher's back, sort of things. So we have to be really knowledgeable about what's going on. Yeah, don't vape. Absolutely against it all the way.
And that's something that we need to talk to our children at school, at home, maybe at church, or other youth group organizations. Sometimes we tend to wonder, how did we even get here for them? I guess it's just trying new things.
Yeah, it's so many things. I mean, kids are naturally curious, right?
Sure.
And teenagers they're risk takers.
Right? Risk takers, yes.
But we've dropped the ball.
We have.
As a society, as a federal government, the FDA has really dropped the ball because they have had the authority to regulate nicotine products and have chosen not to regulate vaping products. Vaping products are essentially unregulated.
Unregulated.
They can do anything they want. And
that's not good.
That's not good at all.
Okay. When we come back, the vaping crisis is causing some smokers to quit smoking altogether. But is it a good idea? We'll talk about it after the break, and you're watching In Depth.
Follow me on a flavor adventure. Great taste awaits. And here we are.
Take yourself on a taste adventure with the new Southwest Chipotle Filet Sandwich with hand-breaded chicken, pickled jalapenos, pepper jack cheese, and Chipotle aioli. One of 2 brand new sandwich meals, only at Zaxby's. And don't miss Jumanji: The Next Level, only in theaters.
You want it? We've got it. You need it. We've got it. You name it. We've got it. You want it? You need it. Here's how you get it. 60-month special financing with no minimum and no down payment. Available every day at Miskelly's.
What does it mean to be healthy? It means finding the steps you take today that lead to a healthier tomorrow, and knowing you have a partner on your wellness journey with the compassion of a cross and the security of a shield. Because at the end of the day, it means you, your health, your life, and all its possibilities. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Mississippi. Live healthy. Live blue. It's good to be blue.
Welcome back, everyone. Fewer people are smoking cigarettes in the United States today. That's according to a report published Thursday by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in 2018. Those cigarette smokers fell to a record low of 13.7% among U.S. adults. The CDC has been collecting data on smoking since 1965. The agency's director attributes a decline to public health education. The report also found cigarette smokers have become more likely to try quitting in the past 12 months. And the report found many have been successful. E-cigarettes, however, are still the third most common tobacco product used by adults behind cigars and cigarettes. We rejoin our guest, Dr. Thomas Dobbs of the State Department of Health. Dr. Dobbs, do you think the effects of this vaping crisis is discouraging smoking altogether?
You know, it's hard to know for sure what the association might be. We have seen for many years, both through concerted effort, through CDC and local health departments and physicians and communities, with all the education we've done, combined with increasing taxes and smoke-free air ordinances so people can't smoke indoors, we've seen a pretty nice decline in smoking over the past decade or so. So that's been wonderful, especially in teens. And we know that teens are very price conscious. They don't have a lot of money. And so if it gets more expensive than taxes, we know they smoke less and less and less. There is some data, especially out of England, that some of the vaping products may help people transition away from tobacco to vaping products. But if you look really at the big impact, there is a small proportion of tobacco smokers, cigarette smokers, who transitioned over to vaping, but that percentage has stayed pretty stable over time. And so there's a small percentage of people who are able to do that. But if you look what's happened with teens, though, they are smoking less and less tobacco like cigarettes, but the vaping, it's just skyrocketing, and probably is displacing the teens who are using tobacco products, traditional tobacco products. But it's more than offset by orders of magnitude on tobacco exposure or nicotine exposure to these vaping products. There probably is some benefit in general as a society. I think the combustible tobacco has become less acceptable, right? You can't do that in public, and there's been a general sense that maybe that's an unhealthy behavior. But there's a feeling maybe that vaping has been more healthy than it really is.
Well, we've heard you talk a lot at State Board of Health meeting about vaping, and we want to take a stand on it. But if you had to say what could be the overriding mitigating factor that we could use to show people where vaping is very, very harmful for your health, do you think it would be media? Do you think it would be education? Or what do you think it should be?
Boy, it probably needs to come from all angles, right? We should use our playbook from tobacco that we used. And certainly huge investments in media and education are important to understanding what the real health issues are, because people make improper assumptions that vaping is healthy now, or at least a much healthier alternative to smoking cigarettes. So we certainly need to work on that angle, right? Make sure people understand it. We need to look at sort of restricting the tobacco companies. Vaping is a tobacco product, and the tobacco companies are heavily invested in all this vaping stuff. So we need to sort of rein them in a little bit, like we have in the past. The FDA has the authority to regulate them and has chosen not to do so. So that needs to happen. Looking at taxes, vaping is a lot cheaper per unit of consumption compared to cigarettes in Mississippi especially. So look at that. Also looking at, smoke-free air so that people can't vape in grocery stores or whatever. I don't want to breathe your mist blown out into the air anymore than I want to breathe your tobacco smoke. So I think, in all of the above strategy, but certainly, heavy communications, heavy media presence, and a general understanding of what the real dangers of this are going to be. We're going to be seeing the effects of this for decades.
For decades to come.
20 years from now, we're going to look back and say, what a missed opportunity we had for this generation of Americans. Our kids who are now facing lung problems, are they going to have increased risk of addiction for, more dangerous substances like opioids? There's a thought that, or some evidence, that addiction early on sets you up for addiction later on, and nicotine is a powerful addiction.
Well, that's a wonderful closing transition, because we want to get you on talking about opioids sometimes in the near future. But You've given us a clear understanding of what we need to do, and we need to do this to help the next generation to live a healthier life.
Thank you, Dr.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us for In Depth.